Yes, we are live here to talk more about the future of Jakarta EE, right? So I'm here with amazing guests to talk about what's going on next, right? My name is Otavio Santana, and to celebrate the Jakarta EE9, I do what I love to do. I play a little bit of piano. I drank my favorite drink, coconut water, and yes, I dance some Brazilian music. How about you, David? How are you? Please introduce yourself and please tell us what do you do to celebrate today?
Um, yeah, well, so I'm David Blevins, and what I'm doing to celebrate today is work on Tommy. So, I think we all work on the release quite a bit. Steve included. Everybody works on the release, and then when these releases are done, we all go work on our implementations because we got a lot of work to do there. So that's the celebration. So we've earned our way to that honor.
Okay. Kevin, how are you? So please
I'm doing
tell us.
good. Thanks. So I don't really have anything really planned for today to celebrate either. We did have earlier we had an all hands meeting at IBM, and so this came up during that, and I talked about how the Jakarta EE9 release happened in November, and we're celebrating today, and we've got several sessions all day today. So that's about it.
Okay. Hello, Scott. How are you?
Good, thank you.
So please introduce yourself and then tell us to the whole audience what did you do to celebrate the new version of Jakarta EE?
I'm Scott Stark. I'm Senior Director of the Software Development at Red Hat, primarily the JBoss division. Today I'm planning on going bowling in Merida, Mexico for a celebration.
That sounds exciting. So, okay,
Just
let's
make
go
sure
to
you
the
take
next.
one pin away. You got to take one pin away. Isn't there 10 there by default?
See?
Yeah, you got to remove one pin, so it's all 9 pins.
It's fine with me.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Steve. Okay, that's easy, Steve. I can see a bottle behind you, probably wine, and it's empty. Therefore,
It
you
is.
already celebrated.
It is. So I'm Steve Millidge. I'm the founder of Payara. So after this, I think I'll be going out for a poncha. I'm in Portugal, so I also go out for some poncha. I've done 3 sessions, so I'm ready for some drink.
And yes, finally, hello, Dmitry.
Hey,
How are you
Otavio.
today?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's evening already. So if you ask me about the celebration, it's Jakarta E9, right? So it has to be some 9 things to do. But I'm not going to open 9 bottles of wine. It's too much. But a little bit. I will open something. I will drink a little bit. I'll remember this year. It was a nice year related to Jakarta E9. Possibly only about Jakarta E9, but anyway, that's another story. So yeah, I will celebrate somehow.
Okay, how about play 9 different music with the guitar behind you? That sounds
I
good.
think you need to do a Jakarta band because you got the piano covered. I could go
Yeah.
guitar, major bass. Is there a drummer here?
I actually can hear a lot of echo. Is it only me or everybody hear it?
Nope,
Not really
it's all
sure.
clear.
No, it's only for me. I'm sorry about that. Right now.
Also, Dmitry, that sounds you. Oops. Okay, guys, that is a account roundtable. That's for you can put your question here to this amazing guest answer to you. So right now we have 1 hour of the more expensive consult time, right? We have Red Hat, Payara, IBM, Oracle, everybody just one place to answer your question. Please go ahead. Yeah, probably they do more code better. They do better code than play some music. And but anyway, we got some question from Twitter. Let's go the first one. how is the Jakarta EE feature is going? How about Jakarta EE 9.1?
Okay, I'll respond to that one. So we've started that discussion. I put together a Google Doc to try to get input on 9.1. And I think based on the replies I've gotten so far in the comments, I think we're all pretty much in agreement that we want a limited 9.1. We want the Java SE 11 support. That's the goal for 9.1. And also to clean up the Corba and RMI IIOP situation. I mean, we tried to do a good portion of that cleanup in Jakarta EE9, but there's still a little bit more work that needs to be done. So I think we're pretty much on the same page. Now we just have to get that kind of finalized into a real release plan and then get that out to, you know, the community for further review and comments. But at least it wasn't way off the board when I opened up that Google Doc. I think the comments were pretty much in line. So that was good.
Yeah. And I think I would just add that, like, in terms of just straight up new features, we might not see too many in 9.1 or any, but we are definitely open to doing, you know, a number of point releases. If, you know, if the community comes up with new features in a specification and release them, that will have the bigger impact on what is the next release. It may be a 9.2 with some new features. It may be a 10 with new features. But either way, now is the time for us to develop new features. So, you know, if you want to get involved in any of the specification projects, we've been saying in the past, you know, hold on, wait, we're almost there. Now we're there. And so, you know, definitely do get involved in the projects, and they will dictate the real timeline and the real, you know, when these things show up. So.
Oh, by the way, everybody, you have the option to put priority in your question. So if you have any question that you enjoy, you can vote. Therefore, there'll be we can do the question first, then another questions, right? So please vote if you enjoy any kind of question in the session. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So this question comes from Edufa. He currently see a lot of frameworks such as Jakarta, Microprofile, Spring, and Quarkus. And the question was about, is there any kind of synergy between Jakarta and Quarkus? Is there any plan to put Quarkus together with Jakarta EE?
Well, I'll take that. So a general issue that we have to deal with in Jakarta EE and Microprofile is this discussion around what the EE10 roadmap is going to look like and how those two projects are going to interoperate or you know, collaborate and, you know, help have a more unified cloud native environment. And so I think one of the things that we've started to talk about in the steering committee is the notion of a cloud for native Java alliance that's going to, you know, potentially take any working group that's interested in cloud native Java and define how those specifications under that pseudo umbrella, it's not going to be a formal legal structure, but some kind of agreement. You know, how do we align technically? How do we align marketing wise, et cetera? And so one of those things that we'll have to deal with is, you know, how does Microprofile and Jakarta coexist and interoperate and relate, et cetera? And obviously that's where Quarkus will fit in is, you know, in terms of, ideally we'd like to see a new smaller profile in Jakarta that's specifically targeting the dependencies of Microprofile, and then Quarkus would be one of the implementations that builds on that, for example.
I would definitely love to see a headless version of EE with no UI technologies at all, and you know, just back end.
Yeah, and well, the other twist there with Quarkus and things like Micronaut and Grail are, you know, actually have an AOT-oriented versions of those platforms as well, which is another new component we really haven't addressed in Jakarta yet, but that is, you know, a main feature that's showing up in cloud environments.
Okay, let's go to the next question. From Thiago Henrique Hupner. I guess he's a Brazilian. How is the progress of using Java SE11 across all the implementations?
Well, we support SE11 already. We put a lot of work into that in 2019, and so that support has been there for a while. And we have people deployed on SE11 that we commercially support. So we're there. The TCK itself has work to do to run on SE11, and so there's work we have to do in 9.1 for that, as Kevin alluded to, and I guess other people can comment on their status on 11.
Yeah, I can cover. So Payara supports SE11, both in server and micro. It has for a while. For the Glassfish side, that will be aligned with Jakarta EE 9.1. So I think Fujitsu have done a lot of that work already. It just needs to be brought up to speed with the latest Glassfish 6.
Open Liberty is in the same boat with supporting Java 11, and that's been in place for couple years anyway. And like David said, we can't say that we're compliant yet because the TCK still needs a little bit of work, but running wise, we run with Java SE11 just fine.
Yeah, I can say the same for Oracle products. You can run WebLogic on Java SE11. And we also have Helidon, which is Java SE11. Uses as a minimum version of Java, so it's 11 plus basically. So it looks like all of the products, I can't say most, I think all of them are actually Java SE11 compatible across all vendors.
Yeah, ditto. Wildfire runs that way. So our focus certainly is going to be on getting the TCK running and also trying to kickstart some of the efforts we've been talking about that other speakers have alluded to, is trying to partition the TCK and get that in a little better shape for future releases. So I don't know how much we can get done for 9.1 though.
Okay, we have a good one from Anu Sampath. How Jakarta is going to embrace reactive programming?
What kind of programming was that?
Reactive.
Oh, reactive. Okay.
No, it's actually a good question. So Jakarta itself, the API style, the development experience of Jakarta is not really reactive, right? So the reactive programmer style is not supported by Jakarta. And to be fair, I didn't see any attempts to bring a reactive paradigm itself into Jakarta EE, right? So if there are some ideas about that, if someone wants to bring it, so you can try it, you can kind of talk with us, and you can contribute it, let's put it this way. On the other hand, there are plenty of frameworks out of Jakarta, but supporting microprofile, let's put it this way, with support reactive programming, right? You can, for instance, take a look at Helidon, which supports microprofile, and on the other hand, as another flavor, supports reactive programming, and I'm sure Quarkus does the same thing.
Yeah, we'd rather see the reactive APIs first show up in microprofile, and then once they have a proven thing, like for example, one thing might be cloud events or something like that. That makes sense to pull into the enterprise, but we really need to see it manifest, and certainly we need the demand from our customers, which to this point, if they're going to do that, they're going off to the platform like microprofile. I don't know that we would advocate pushing that into Jakarta at this point.
Okay, let's go to the next question. How do you think microprofile can be aligned with Jakarta EE?
Well, I'll comment on this one just because I think people misunderstand the goals, right? So when we launched off microprofile, we were imagining this as complementary from the get-go, and that the JCP would still be holding Java EE. And our kind of perspective on that time, and still, is that we always needed a place where we can collaborate and try to evolve in a way that is kind of rapid and experimental, and sacrificing backwards compatibility to make that happen if necessary, right? And so basically MicroProfile is a project no different than, say, Spring or any other type of open source project that delivers libraries for people to use in that regard. We try to keep things stable. We may change things once in a while in a way that's backwards incompatible. And therefore, having Jakarta EE be dependent on MicroProfile APIs is as difficult as having Jakarta EE be dependent on Spring APIs, right? Just because we happen to be the same people doesn't make it technically any easier to take something that doesn't have a 20-year backwards compatibility guarantee and put it into something that does have a 20-year backwards compatibility guarantee. Not quite 20 years, we haven't discussed it, but that's what it's worked out to be so far. And so there's technical challenges there. And when I say technical challenges, I mean we would have to decide not to keep doing this. We'll work fast and rapid, and if we need to break things, it's okay. We'd have to completely abandon that tenant in MicroProfile to take the APIs as is and just move them and make them used in Jakarta EE. So there's a challenge there, and solutions to it could be make a Jakarta version of the API. We sort of went that way when we initiated a config JSR. There was going to be a config JSR under the JobX namespace that was based upon MicroProfile config. That is absolutely one of the ways we can handle this. It's a community discussion, but just so we're clear, as is MicroProfile and Jakarta EE have different backwards compatibility goals for the sake of innovation. So, let's make sure to understand that they're technically not aligned in that regard. That doesn't mean that ideas can't flow from MicroProfile into Jakarta EE in some way. We just need to figure that out.
The other thing that I'd like to expand on there a little bit is, MicroProfile, we recently became a working group, which then also implies or required that we follow a derivative of the Eclipse Foundation specification process. So now that MicroProfile, now that we will be generating specifications that are compliant with the EFSP, and Jakarta EE does the same thing, now there is some more synergy that could happen between those two projects. And before MicroProfile became a member or created this working group, that was not possible. So that is one item, one of the work items that happened in 2020 that will allow us to work together in the future.
Yeah, what we'd like to see happen, I mentioned we'd like to see a new MicroProfile or a lighter profile, let's call it a light profile, that centers on the dependencies that MicroProfile currently has, and then pulls in things like config that's a little more mature. But then there is the big question of exactly how those specs evolve and develop and are put out. But in conjunction with that, I'd also like to see that profile actually release independently of any other profiles, the web profile, the full profile. We'd even like to see something we've coined an enterprise profile that is targeted toward backward compatibility and transformation of EE8 and earlier applications as a notion that we help standardize, so there's a consistent notion of how do I take a legacy application, actually run it on a newer runtime, for example.
A little bit to add to that conversation about Jakarta EE and MicroProfile relationship. Currently, how I see it, currently MicroProfile supports only Jakarta EE8, which is still JavaX namespace. So I think that the first step to kind of cooperate, these two projects would be to add support of the latest Jakarta version, which is in Jakarta namespace, to MicroProfile. I guess that it's in the plans, but it may happen only the next year at the Jakarta EE 2010 timeframe, possibly. And when MicroProfile supports Jakartified APIs, it would be easier to kind of do more integrations and vice versa.
So
yeah, I was just going to add that. So MicroProfile actually sits on top of Jakarta EE. It's not a platform in its own right. It's got Jakarta EE as the baseline. So as Dmitry says, first thing is actually keeping that aligned with Jakarta EE as Jakarta EE moves forward. I think some bits of MicroProfile may move into different specifications. So there's been talk about bits of fault tolerance, like asynchronous, and bulkhead could probably more likely live in Jakarta concurrency. Things like that may happen, and as things stabilize, maybe we move them into Jakarta EE, maybe we keep them where they are, but it ultimately is aligned as it's based on top of Jakarta EE at the end of the day.
Yeah, and a key thing to mention is that pretty much all of us have a platform that has MicroProfile and Jakarta EE in the same box shipping together, right? So they're not in any way you're not in any way prevented from using both of them in the same box. So in a lot of regards, when will they get aligned is sort of, they're already shipped de facto by everybody together. And when we're doing our bytecode transformations to produce Jakarta EE9, Tommy 9, it contains MicroProfile, and all the APIs have been bytecode transformed to be Jakarta APIs. So we're even transforming our MicroProfile implementations to upgrade them to Jakarta namespace. It's really just a matter of, could a spec from Jakarta EE depend on a spec from MicroProfile? And a critical question to people really who ask that question, when are they going to be aligned? Would you be okay with eliminating the backwards compatibility guarantee in Jakarta EE? Because that may happen as, it may be that people decide, all right, we want some of what that fun MicroProfile thing's going on there, and that results in backwards compatibility in Jakarta EE. Is that do you want that? Because, if we push this conversation in a certain direction, that may be one of the outcomes, right? So, definitely let us know if that is important to you, right? Do you need the kind of backwards compatibility guarantee we've been offering over the last 20 years?
Yeah, that's a nice opportunity to remember. Follow Jakarta EE on Twitter, Facebook. I guess no Instagram, right? Nobody uses Instagram right now. I'm not sure. I'm not young anymore, so I'm. But anyway, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, email us, and here comes the next question. So, what tools are available for developers looking for help with the migration between Javax to Jakarta namespace?
I'll just jump in first then. Sorry. I was going to say that, to be honest, Jakarta EE is a runtime. It's probably a runtime problem to migrate a lot of these applications or support backwards compatibility to these applications. So from a lot of the presentations I've seen, implementations like Payara will support both JavaX and Jakarta, and then allow them to run on newer runtimes. I think then other tooling vendors will need to step up and work out how they move their tooling.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing as Steve mentioned, is we're attempting to support both of those from the same code base. And, just because it's I wouldn't say it's easier for us to do the bytecode transformations on our server versus you doing it on your applications, because it's not easy to do the bytecode transformation on our server. We got to put a lot of work into it. But we can catch all the edge cases in our stuff a lot easier than it is for every individual user to have to catch all the edge cases. So we think bytecode transforming to create effectively two servers, a JavaX server and a Jakarta server, is probably the easiest way for everyone to move forward, at least for the first several years. And the Eclipse Transformer is the key to that. So that's the tool. I did mention briefly in the industry keynote, we have a Tommy patch plugin that actually will allow you to go and replace an individual Java file, and so you can actually add if-else blocks and other things where simple bytecode transformation isn't possible. So that's been critical for us as well. So we can patch individual files and change the logic just slightly to handle, string namespaces and things like that. But I hope that gets near the question.
Well, the other thing that, I think we've all talked about how the transformer has been used in our application servers runtimes, but the transformer can also be used for applications that are just looking to experiment with the new namespace. I mean, we use a transformer on the early versions of the TCK. So we took the whole Jakarta EE 8 TCK and ran that through the transformer, and we had an early version before we had Jakarta EE 9 TCK. So it is something that you could do for test cases or applications if you're looking to get started with the new namespace.
Right, and you can even integrate it into your build chain. So, for example, we have an alpha version of Quarkus where we're actually building native binaries that are utilizing the transformer to transform both the Quarkus components as well as your application in the Quarkus build chain to produce a native image that supports that.
Yeah. I guess I'll add to that we do use the transformer on our examples in the Tommy repo. We have about like 180 different examples, all in JavaX, and each one of them has the Eclipse Transformer plugin, Maven plugin, hooked up into it, and we do produce a Jakarta version of that same example that those do run. So, you can easily get 95% of what you're aiming at accomplished with the Eclipse Transformer.
Yep.
Okay, that's time to talk about future trends. We got a question for Seji. Is there any proper way to deploy Jakarta EE applications? And is there any trends or recommendation to deploy these applications, such as containers, for example?
Can you say that again? I didn't quite understand.
Is there any proper way to deploy Jakarta EE application? And is there any trends or recommendation to deploy this kind of application, for example, using containers?
Well, certainly the cloud native deployments are becoming more important, and I think everyone has spoken to that at various points today. So certainly that's one piece that we're focusing on with the Quarkus toolchain. You still have the legacy applications that are run as monoliths in, personal cloud or private clouds, as well as traditional hosted servers. I mean, that's going to continue to be a mainstay for Jakarta EE for a while, but I do think that's part of that cloud native initiative or cloud native for Java initiative and alliance. I think we need to focus on, and how we come up with standards and patterns for supporting that a little better.
I think one of the beauties about Jakarta EE is that there isn't one standard way of deploying a Jakarta EE application. Yeah. So Jakarta EE gives you a packaging, which is a WAR file or an EAR file, and you can deploy that into a Payara micro running on a Docker container, or you could deploy it into a traditional 6-node server cluster in a data center, or even some of the implementations support mainframes. So I think that's one of the beauties of Jakarta EE, is that there isn't an answer to that question.
Yeah, it's one of those. I always kind of laugh a little bit when I hear the question. Not that it's a bad question, but basically from the beginning of Java EE, it's been designed to be agnostic of the runtime. So you write an app that is in no way bound to the runtime, and so therefore the runtime can exist in any form factor that's imaginable. It could be a cloud, it could be a Raspberry Pi, it could be whatever you want. Your application is not in any way impacted. You can deploy on all of those. And then later on in, like the late 2010s, the 2010 range, the cloud computing started to become popular. And then people immediately turned around and said, hey, when are you going to do that thing that you've been doing the last 10 years? and it's sort of like we already had that covered, right? And we didn't have to change anything to enable cloud for EE. And there's Jelastic and Azure and Azure and Beanstalk and all these things that support EE implementations in the cloud. And so they've been around for a very long time. And the right answer is whatever you want to do, right? You could bundle it all up in the server. You could ship them as one unit. You could do your app separately. You could put them in a Docker container. Kubernetes, all these things are possible. You're not limited in any way.
Oh, hello, Arjun. How are you? So let's go to the next question. From Arjun team. One of the major proposed themes in Jakarta EE is the CDI alignment. Make many other APIs, for example, Java Serverface, to use CDI. However, there are discussion to ancient CDI to go to a static point, for example, CDI Lite. What do you think about this? Should you go to CDI Lite? Should we go to CDI alignment?
Well, that's a conversation that we're just starting to have. So the fundamental issue or the point of change for CDI Lite is it's focused on ahead of time compilation. So it's focused on producing native images and removing some of the implicit and explicit requirements or expectations for runtime analysis of a deployment. So that's a big discussion that we have to have and we have to get straight is there going to be basically a new spec that CDI is focused on AOT? Is there a relation? It's kind of the same thing to microprofile in Java. We have a new paradigm with this AOT compilation. How are we going to integrate it into both Jakarta and microprofile? CDI has started that conversation, and that's the conversation that we're having right now on the CDI dev list is, what does CDI Lite mean? What's the relationship to the legacy APIs? I think it's kind of orthogonal that other specs make more use of CDI and the client-facing applications, because realize the build time APIs that we're talking about are traditionally what people use for integration of the implementations. It's not really what the API or the components in an application make use of.
Yeah, I'll add on that. I think that there's some opportunity to have a discussion on whether some things could be moved out of CDI into the respective specs, like the basically EJB requirements in CDI probably could be moved into the EJB.
Well, I'm advocating that's a necessity. We need to do that because right now that was a huge problem with putting a release out. You basically have circularity with respect to the TCKs, and so part of the TCK work, that's something I think absolutely needs to be done.
Okay, let me add my 2 cents here, right? So what Scott was saying is absolutely right. So CDI Lite profile, as I see it, is basically needed to produce native images. CDI as itself, using a lot of runtime operations and especially CDI extensions, are not really compatible by building native images and ahead of time compilation by design. Right, so it's not possible to do it. So the idea is to introduce the lowest level CDI profile, which supports ahead of time compilation, which supports a special kind of extensions, which are not the same as portable extensions now, but possibly portable. This new extension may behave as portable extensions as it is now. So there is a discussion going on at the moment, right? And at least the understanding, the ideas what I have in my mind is that CDI Lite profile is for lightweight frameworks like Quarkuses, like Helidonis, and so on. And full CDI profile, which is enterprise profile, which exists now. There are 2 profiles, right? CDI SE, CDI Enterprise Edition. This EE profile of CDI will still exist, and its main consumer, let's put it this way, is Jakarta EE, right? Jakarta EE specifications. And about CDI alignment, right? Well, it's definitely needed because it's better to have one injection mechanism used by all specifications. It becomes easier to use. For instance, currently in JaksRS, there are different injection mechanisms designed by JaksRS itself, right? And it supports CDI too, so it becomes a little bit of a mess, right? That using two injection mechanisms in one spec. So CDI alignment will eliminate that, and it will make one universal injection mechanism across all the specs. So it's definitely good stuff to do. But discussion is ongoing, right? So if you folks want to participate in the discussion, join CDI mailing list, and there are going to be some even meetings to, if you have some opinion, if you have something to share, join the discussion, inviting everyone.
Yeah, I actually posted the mailing list. What do you call it? Where you join, where you're going to join, and there is actually going to be a meeting next Tuesday where some of the implementers who have been starting this discussion will talk about it some more.
And thank you, Arian, for the question. By the way, everyone mispronounces his name. They always say Arjan. It's Arian, as I understand it. So everybody sees his name a ton, and you've always probably wondered how to pronounce it. There it is. He's an awesome guy.
Thank you, David, to correct me.
Okay.
Arian.
Yeah.
Okay. I have that feeling because usually nobody speaks my name correctly.
Oh, I know. You get called Octavio on such a regular basis as people add the T to your name.
Yeah, exactly.
Otavio. It's Otavio, no C.
But anyway, there's a good question from Kiko. Is there any future to JSF in the next Jakarta EE versions?
Well, probably Arian would be the guy to answer that question.
Yeah, or I see that Ed is out there too, so he might have a view on that as well.
It's definitely community. Arian does in fact already have a message saying it's still evolving. So there you go.
Yeah.
Point for that is that it's actually the specification projects that drive that forward, not us as vendors. So Arian's leading that specification, therefore he can drive forward JSF. It's not like we predetermine this. It's the community that will drive forward the specifications.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the stock answer is when people say, will this be in there? It's like, you tell me. Are you going to work on that? Because if so, then yes, right? That's as simple as that.
Okay, just 4 minutes left. I got one question here. Jakarta is implementation first, but what does that mean?
It means that we can't release a specification unless there's an implementation at minimum, right? It can mean a lot more other things, but that's like the bare bones, can't get past that requirement. So we have to have an implementation there before we can ship a specification. We can't ship a specification that doesn't yet have an implementation, maybe hopefully someday will. That's just not what we do. So that's the minimum definition.
Okay, nice. Unfortunately, just 3 minutes left. That was amazing conversation, round table. And to last question for sure, we need to talk about the future. A question to everybody. What do you expect to the future?
In 3 minutes?
Yeah.
A lot more fun features and 100 new community committers to all the specification projects.
So one thing that I'd like to point out, and David and I were just having a conversation about this yesterday, is having all of this in the open is such a big plus. I mean, having the TCKs available, we're able to look at them, discuss how everybody is passing or not passing certain tests, and we're doing this in the open. it's fantastic.
Talking about features, I would like to mention that, for instance, in JSON B, we have a list of features we are planning to add to the new version of the spec. It's public. It's in our issues tracker. There are quite nice features we are planning to add. So just take a look. JSON P, JSON processing also has a list of features. It's much smaller, but there is something interesting, definitely, to take a look again. And talking about JakartaOne, these folks already had a list of features a year ago, which we want to add, right? And then somewhere in public published too. So again, you folks who want to contribute, who think that some other features are needed, feel free to check the features. Feel free to contribute your own ideas to the specs and contribute.
Yeah.
And without your ideas, nothing will happen. So I'm inviting everyone to participate.
Yeah, exactly what Kevin and Dmitry said. I'll be blunt. We already had access to all the specifications as vendors over the last 20 years. So we're not gaining anything new by this openness. We're so excited because it allows all of you to participate on equal footing to us in a way that has never been possible. Please do that, right? We're excited about this openness because it brings you to the table. Please take advantage. We're begging you. Come, make this be the community that we want, right?
Steve, Scott, final word.
Well, I would just reinforce that. Really, it's getting involved. It's the openness, and what I'm hoping for is a whole flood of brilliant ideas to appear on GitHub issues on various specifications, and I'd be happy to go away and implement them. I definitely don't want to dream them all up.
Well, I think what I would add is our focus is really going to be on defining the platform and new platforms and profiles to understand how these new things like IoT and microprofile fit it together. Because we really have to have some management to actually put the profile specs out, to have a consistent platform. So that will be our focus.
Thank you, everybody. See you in the next session. Bye-bye. That was amazing.